3 days before El Clásico, the pressure inside Real Madrid finally exploded. According to multiple reports, a dressing room altercation between Federico Valverde and Aurelien Tchouaméni became so serious that Valverde ended up in hospital with a head injury. Emergency meetings followed, disciplinary proceedings were opened, suddenly the cracks inside the club were impossible to ignore. And honestly, it didn't come out of nowhere, because for months something at Real Madrid had felt wrong. The performances looked tense, the dressing room looked divided, the pressure kept growing. This was supposed to be the beginning of a new era. Instead, it slowly became one of the most chaotic seasons Real Madrid have had in years. So what actually happened? How did a squad full of superstars fall apart this quickly? Why did tensions grow inside the dressing room? And why did Xabi Alonso's project collapse so fast? As well, why does the season suddenly feel like the end of something bigger? This story didn't begin with the fight was just the moment everything finally became visible. At the start of the season, most people ignored the warning signs because Real Madrid were still winning matches. Not perfectly, not convincingly, but enough to keep the noise away. And that's the dangerous thing about elite clubs. Results can hide tension for a long time. Even during good runs, there were moments where the team looked emotionally disconnected. Body language between players felt strange, defensive transitions looked lazy, some stars pressed aggressively while others barely moved. But because Madrid kept collecting wins, those details got ignored. Inside the club, though, frustration was slowly building. Reports later suggested several players were already unhappy with the tactical demands under Xabi Alonso, especially the strict positional discipline and constant intensity required in training. And when small frustrations keep building inside a dressing room full of huge personalities, eventually something breaks. The Manchester City tie actually showed both sides of Madrid perfectly. The quality was still there, the mentality in big moments was still dangerous. But underneath the victories, the chemistry didn't feel natural anymore. The team looked more like talented individuals trying to coexist instead of a group fully united behind one identity. And that tension only became worse once results started slipping. And once those hidden frustrations started growing, everything changed when a new manager arrived with a completely different mentality. When Xabi Alonso arrived at Real Madrid, the expectations were enormous. He wasn't just another coach, he was supposed to represent the future of the club. After what he achieved at Bayern Leverkusen, building an organized, intense, tactically disciplined team, Madrid believed he could modernize the squad the same way. But there was one major problem. Real Madrid isn't Bayer Leverkusen. At Leverkusen, Alonso coached hungry players desperate to grow inside his system. At Madrid, he walked into a dressing room filled with Ballon d'Or contenders, global superstars, massive egos, and players already used to winning everything. And immediately, the cultural clash became obvious. Alonso demanded structure, constant pressing, strict positioning, defensive responsibility from attackers. Some players adapted, others reportedly hated it. Because Real Madrid's dressing room has historically worked best under managers who manage personalities emotionally. Coaches like Carlo Ancelotti or Zinedine Zidane who protected stars and created harmony. Alonso approached things differently, and he wanted control. And slowly, that created friction. The Super Cup loss against Barcelona became a turning point. Madrid looked emotionally exhausted during parts of the match, and reports later suggested tensions behind the scenes had already started growing heavily by then. The football world saw still a project. Inside the dressing room, some players were already losing belief. But strict tactics alone weren't the real issue. The bigger problem was how the dressing room slowly started reacting to them. One of the biggest problems at elite clubs is that tension rarely stays tactical. Eventually, it becomes personal. As the season became more difficult, reports about disagreements inside the dressing room started increasing constantly. Some players reportedly felt Alonso's communication style was too cold and distant. Others believe certain stars were receiving different treatment. And once that starts happening, unity disappears quickly. You could actually see it during matches. Certain players pressing alone, midfielders throwing frustrated gestures after misplaced passes, defenders arguing after goals conceded. Against Bayern Munich in Europe, Madrid looked emotionally unstable for long stretches. Once momentum shifted against them, the structure disappeared completely. That's usually the clearest sign a dressing room is no longer fully together, because elite teams survive pressure through trust. This Madrid side stopped trusting itself, and as pressure grew externally from media and fans, the internal frustration became even more intense. By the final months of the season, the atmosphere around the club no longer felt competitive, it felt toxic. And as the atmosphere inside the squad became more divided, another major arrival added even more pressure to the balance of the team. The arrival of Kylian Mbappe was supposed to complete Real Madrid. Instead, it complicated the balance of the squad more than expected. Not because Mbappe lacked quality, his talent was obvious immediately. But integrating a superstar of that level changes everything inside a dressing room. Roles change, egos shift, hierarchy changes. And suddenly, players who once felt untouchable begin feeling challenged. Reports throughout the season suggested tensions existed around authority inside the squad, especially regarding tactical discipline and leadership. That's the hidden danger of super teams. On paper, more stars should mean better football, but in reality, balancing personalities becomes harder every month. And Madrid never fully solved that balance. At times, the attack looked disconnected. Defensive effort between players became inconsistent, some stars sacrificed for the system, others looked less committed. That difference slowly damaged the collective mentality of the team, because modern football punishes imbalance brutally. And for long stretches this season, Real Madrid looked like a team filled with world-class individuals, but missing one clear identity. But the Mbappe situation only made one deeper issue even more visible: Xabi Alonso's relationship with parts of the dressing room. This was probably the biggest internal problem of the entire season. Xabi Alonso's mentality made him successful at Leverkusen, but at Real Madrid, that same intensity reportedly created major friction with parts of the squad. He demanded tactical discipline constantly, training sessions became stricter, positional mistakes were criticized heavily. Some players respected it, others reportedly felt suffocated by it. And once results started declining, those frustrations became louder. According to several reports, some Madrid players struggled with Alonso's cold personality and rigid tactical approach. That's where managing Real Madrid becomes different from almost any other club in football. You're not just coaching tactics, you're managing global superstars with enormous influence inside the club, and Alonso never fully found the emotional balance needed for that environment. His standards remained high, but the connection between coach and dressing room slowly weakened. That's why the project collapsed so quickly once momentum disappeared. Because tactical ideas only survive if the dressing room still believes emotionally, and by the end it felt like too many players had stopped believing. One underrated reason for Madrid's collapse was leadership. Not tactical leadership, emotional leadership. For years, Real Madrid had players who controlled difficult moments naturally. Guys like Kroos, Modric, Nacho, Benzema, Ramos before them. When pressure rose, those players stabilized the team emotionally. This squad didn't always have that. Reports after the Valverde Tchouaméni incident have even mentioned concerns internally about the lack of experienced dressing room control after the departures of older leaders. And honestly, you could feel it. When matches became chaotic, nobody calmed the group down. Instead, frustration spread quickly across the pitch. That's dangerous at clubs like Madrid because pressure there never disappears. Every defeat becomes a crisis. Every rumor becomes a headline, and without strong internal leadership, emotions start controlling performances. And eventually, emotions started controlling the entire season. Then came the moment nobody could ignore anymore: the fight between Valverde and Tchouaméni. According to reports, tensions between both players escalated during training before exploding inside the dressing room, leaving Valverde hospitalized with a head injury, and emergency meetings followed immediately afterward. Suddenly, the entire season made sense. Because fights like that don't appear from nowhere, they happen when frustration has been building silently for months. Pressure from poor results, internal disagreements, emotional exhaustion, everything finally exploded at once, and the timing made it even worse. Just days before El Clásico, at the biggest club in the world, with cameras, media pressure, and fans already furious, The image of Real Madrid completely changed in that moment. Not a giant struggling temporarily, a club internally breaking apart. What made peak Real Madrid special wasn't just talent, it was emotional control. No matter how chaotic matches became, the club always felt mentally powerful. This season, that identity disappeared. When things went wrong, panic appeared quickly, body language collapsed, confidence disappeared mid-game. Against Bayern Munich, Madrid looked emotionally fragile once momentum shifted, and that's unusual for Real Madrid. Historically, they survived chaos better than anyone. This version didn't. That's why the season felt so shockingly emotional. Not because Madrid lost matches, Madrid always lose matches sometimes, but because they stopped looking like Real Madrid mentally. And once that emotional aura disappears, pressure becomes much heavier. This squad was supposed to represent the next generation. Young stars, new coach, new era, but maybe the rebuild moved too quickly, because replacing legendary personalities is harder than replacing football ability. You can sign talent easily, replacing dressing room chemistry takes years. Madrid tried to transition eras while still demanding immediate dominance. And that combination created enormous pressure internally. Young stars suddenly carried expectations usually handled by experienced veterans. Meanwhile, the coaching staff tried implementing tactical evolution during constant media pressure and dressing room instability. Everything became too intense, too quickly, and eventually the season collapsed under that pressure. For years, Real Madrid terrified Europe because they looked emotionally unstoppable. No matter the score, no matter the pressure, no matter the opponent. They always believed, and this season that belief disappeared. Not because the squad lacked talent, but because the club slowly lost the balance between ego, discipline, leadership, and unity. Too many tensions, too many frustrations, too many personalities pulling in different directions. And eventually, the football started reflecting it. The Valverde incident didn't destroy Real Madrid, it simply exposed how damaged the atmosphere had already become. Now the club faces its biggest challenge in years. Not building tactically, rebuilding emotionally. Because talent alone has never been enough at Real Madrid, and this season proved that more clearly than ever.